As Jeff Gordon joins us every Thursday, talk a little sports. He, of course, with the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, STLtoday.com. You can listen at KTRS or watch on the newspaper, STLtoday.com. Good morning, Jeff Gordon.
Good morning.
Before we talk a little pool holes, and I know it's been hashed, rehashed, buried, dug up again, and then beat like a dead horse, but this Adam Wainwright thinking possibly maybe that manager Mike Matheny might possibly be, shall we say, a little incorrect in that he was laboring. They have since made up. But I think as a manager, these guys were teammates. They're well-respected. It was no big deal. But as a manager, you kind of want your pitcher to not want to come out of the game, right? I mean, that was heat of the moment comments.
Right, you definitely want guys that way. Earlier this year, Mike Matheny goes out, I think it was Lance Lynn, and said, hey, and Lynn was ready to get, it was Mitchell Boggs. Boggs was going to give him the ball, and he said, no, you're staying out here. I think he's had those conversations with Lynn where the guy was ready to come out. No, you're staying out here. He's trying to get his guys to be the Bulldogs, to want to fight through, to like Lynn did last night. He wasn't great, but he fought through.
Right.
So he wants guys like Wainwright to be furious about coming out. Now, you got to handle it well so you don't undermine your manager. But I think in this case, everybody knows Wainwright. Everybody knows the relationship he has with Matheny.
Right.
Adam felt terrible about it and corrected it. But
and afterwards, the guy sticks a microphone in your face, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning after a 3-hour rain delay. You were taken out of the game. You lose the game. You're kind of upset. Things tend to be said.
No, you want a guy that's furious about coming out, who didn't like losing,
right,
and who wants to be the guy that like Carpenter is. You think Carpenter would enjoy coming out of a game when he's healthy? Probably not. I mean, he would just stare at you. And do you think Bob Gibson liked coming out of games? I mean, you had to go out there with like a tractor to get him off the mound.
Are we surprised at how well Matheny's doing? Or I mean, it's right. It's well respect, right? Well, sort of the common sense is that he's doing a great job, right? I mean, are we surprised by that?
A little bit. I mean, everybody wondered about the pick of Mike Matheny when Terry Francona was there. A very experienced manager, well-respected manager, very successful guy. He was available at the time you hired Mike Matheny. Some people said, well, Mike's just the manager because Mozeliak, the general manager, John wants to have a guy he can control. Well, if you look at Mike's, what he has done, he's done two things. One, he's been very good for younger players and developing a team. This is the direction the team is going. They want to develop players, teach them how to play, grow them, and he's been great with younger players. And he's really continued the pitching culture, great pitching culture, where the Yadier Molina and, carrying on what Dave Duncan did with Derek Lilliquist. Those are two key things. Whether he didn't win the pennant, he didn't go to the World Series, they came up a game short, but the more important things that Mike Matheny's done, great work with young players, and he's maintained the pitching atmosphere.
It's a great point, and I was talking about this with somebody last night. He was an afterthought, right? Chris Carpenter signs with the Cardinals, and Carpenter says to Jocketty, hey, there's a catcher, Matheny, out there on the beach. You might want to give him a shot, and the Cardinals hired him as a non-roster invitee to spring training.
And you look at Mike's career, and he wasn't much of a hitter at the time especially, but he had a chance here to grow, become a leader, become better, not like Molina better, but better at the plate. And, he was a guy that, because of his offensive inability, seemed to be doomed to be a fringe guy in baseball, grew here.
Right.
And everybody saw as he grew here that he had the leadership ability to do this.
I thought that was a brilliant pick on Mo's part. The Cardinals next week travel to Los Angeles to take on the Los Angeles Angels.
Yeah, the good news for Albert Pujols is that he is hitting better. Now, the team's still in bad shape, especially with the Rangers winning again. And the good news, he's hitting better. And also, Josh Hamilton's the big story there. He's awful. So at least Albert has managed to avoid the negative limelight.
So the fact that Josh Hamilton's worse means that Albert is sort of off the frying pan.
Yeah, he's doing well enough. Not what you paid for, but compared to Hamilton, who's a catastrophe, he's fine. And it's going to be bittersweet for Albert to look across and see Molina, who's got his new contract, and Wainwright, who's got his contract, and Alan Craig's got his contract. And that's your team. That was your old team, and those guys are happily employed and doing. And meanwhile, you're kind of just a guy out in Anaheim.
And you've got who took your money, right? You turned down the money. They gave it to him, and he's going to go to the All-Star game.
And he's been phenomenal. He wants to stay, and they may find a way to keep him, and it's a happy family over there. And meanwhile, you're, well, not doing so.
So he's so here are his stats. He's batting .256, which is not Albert-like. He's got 13 home runs, which is, he's on pace to hit close to 30, right?
Right.
And he's got how many RBIs? He's got 48 RBIs.
So the RBI and the home run starting to come into line. He'll end up with okay numbers. Great numbers for a lot of guys.
Right.
Great numbers for Matt Holliday, maybe, but not for Albert.
Yeah. And then what are your thoughts? Boy, I had a really good question, and then I totally blew it. Baseball. Oh, I know what it was. Molina at first base last night. Explain that move to me.
Well, they wanted him in the lineup because he's hitting. They wanted to give him a break from catching because he catches a lot of games. And they didn't want to DH him because if they were to take Tony Cruz out and he's a DH, then your pitcher has to hit.
Oh, okay.
So as a first baseman, he could go back behind the plate if they took Cruz out for a pinch hitter, and so later in the game he could catch, and they wouldn't have to bother with the whole throwing the pitcher into the fray thing. So
that's Matheny. See how brilliant he is? But this means Matt Adams isn't going to get the at-bats people were hoping he was going to get with this DH.
It was a lefty matchup deal, and they were, trying to get Tony Cruz some at-bats. He almost never hits. They're trying to load up right-handers. As it turns out, it didn't work. They didn't have a great offensive game.
Right.
The pitcher was tough, and they struggled a bit.
What do you think Luno was thinking last night? We're talking about Pujols moving on. Luno's sitting there in Houston watching all of the players he drafted play very well.
It's kind of weird because you notice when the Cardinals did something well, the crowd response was there. It was about a 50-50 crowd between Cardinal and Astro fans. But, his own team's not as bad as people thought. So that's the good news for Jeff is they haven't been horrible. They've just been kind of horrible.
Right.
So, yeah, it must be mixed feelings, but, he's getting to build a franchise in his own image, the image, they'll take the blueprint that they used in St. Louis. I think he enjoys the challenge.
I can't tell if he is, and I guess we'll find out or whatever, but I can't tell if he's a genius or if he's really, really lucky or maybe a little bit of both.
Yeah, he felt his way through his job in St. Louis. He had a thing about Jeff where he really ran into trouble with the field staff, the guys like La Russa and Duncan, was he would listen to anybody with a crackpot theory. And some of that stuff proved valuable and some of the stuff was ridiculous. But he can manage to kind of sift through it all and develop a great farm system and draft a lot of good players.
Jeff Gordon with us with the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Why don't the Cardinals go to a 6-man rotation, save some arms? Does that not make some sense?
Well, the theory is that if you got great pitching, and you could argue that Wainwright is a great guy. I'm not sure anybody else is on that staff. There's some good pitching. But they prefer to be in a certain rotation. That if they get too much rest, that's a bad thing. That they like to be in the 5-man seems to be a good fit for people. In fact, they're just using a 4-man rotation with all these off days to keep guys on their regular routine. They're creatures of habit. If they get out of that sync, sometimes the results aren't good, and then that's kind of the argument. You
wonder, though, long season, 6-month season, 200-plus innings, you sort of stretch it out a little bit. There's a lot of young players on there, the Shelby Millers. Do you really want to go every 5th day? You maybe stretch it out a little longer. I don't know. It just seems like they have the luxury. Why not save them a little bit and then sort of gear up towards the end of the season for the playoff run?
It's a great point because they're using 6-man rotations in the minors at Springfield and Memphis to space guys out. And, Lynn ran out of gas last year, needed a break.
Right.
They're worried about Miller this year. Same thing.
Right.
If Joe Kelly's in a rotation, if there's a young guy, Waka, Martinez, you'll be worried about him. Other than Wainwright, he's your one workforce.
Right. See?
That's it.
See, not that I'm questioning Matheny because we're not allowed to question Matheny on this show. But I don't know, it's just sort of.
But it's funny. They did kind of a goofy thing last when they won the championship with Edwin Jackson. After they acquired him, they knocked Loesch out of the rotation, keeping some guys on regular turns and then just kind of spacing other guys out. It was an interesting thing that Kyle did not enjoy, but it worked.
Right. Well, we got a month before the trading deadline of the Cardinals. What do the Cardinals need going into the playoff run?
I talked to Mosaic about that a couple days ago. He says, I don't know what I need right now. Somebody gets hurt. Pitching breaks down, maybe the bullpen cracks, then your needs are more evident. But as they sit right now, other than maybe a better right-handed pinch hitter on the bench, another starting pitcher just to be sure, that's about it.
Lastly, Jeff Gordon, while we have you, Alex Rodriguez, are you watching that debacle take place in New York?
Yeah, he's got a contract and he knows it. And, Cashman can pop off, Brian Cashman, the GM of the Yankees, and he did pop off. But Alex has a contract. And Alex seems intent on collecting that contract. And even though the fans hate him, the media's on him, the commissioner's mad at him, the commissioner wants him. But he's got the contract, and Alex is just like, I'm going to collect this.
He's got, 6 years left, 5 years left, something ridiculous. I mean,
they want him to go away so badly, and yet here
it's their own fault.
They had him out the door, and they brought him back. They had him. He voided his contract. They should have celebrated.
There's a story there because when he voids his contract, he has a meeting with Warren Buffett. And Warren Buffett sits him down and says, "Are you happy in New York?" And he's, "Yeah, okay." He says, "Go back to him. Go back to New York." So he cuts a deal with New York, and he was looking. And Warren Buffett sat down with Alex Rodriguez. Alex Rodriguez flew to Omaha to meet with Warren Buffett, and Warren Buffett said, "You're an idiot. Go sign with the Yankees."
Smart man, Warren. That's why he's so rich.
That's why he's Warren Buffett. All right, Jeff Gordon. When do we read you? When do we see you?
Well, on STLtoday.com, have a tip sheet thing looking at today about the Aaron Hernandez situation, some people's views on that, and we'll continue to have stories pretty much around the clock on STLtoday.com.
That's Jeff Gordon. Thanks for coming in, Jeff. See you next Thursday.